Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I motion that the governing board convene an executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3 and 4 regarding vendor contract issues and to ARS 38-431.03A3 and 4 regarding the process of a superintendent search. Anna seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Anna. Okay, we're going to reconvene in open session. I move to approve the direction given in executive session.
Second.
Give that one. And I heard Anna. She's right next to me. I'll give it to Anna. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right. We're going to go ahead and do a moment of silence. And, well, are we not going to do?
The pledge is right after.
Yeah. Okay. Just going back, we ultimately skipped roll call, but that, I understand now Dr. Latzenheiser's question, which you asked earlier. All right, moment of silence and pledge of allegiance, please. Before we approve the agenda, I just want to do a roll call, just so that we have it. So Mr. Latzenheiser, roll call, please.
Thank you for that, President Anderson. Let the record show that we have 4 members in attendance today, and Ms. Schultz is absent.
Thank you. Okay, I move that we approve the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right, Mr. Latzenheiser, do you have any reports, any information for us today?
Thank you, President Anderson. I'm filling in for Mrs. Richards. She's out this evening. First, we'd like to jump into our points of pride. Tonight, we are celebrating points of pride from our maintenance, construction, transportation, and the district office. And so we're going to have the supervisor of the individuals that were selected come up and be recognized for our points of pride. And we will start with Mr. Tyler Moore, recognizing Mr. Markling.
Thanks, David. So Matt unfortunately could not make it tonight. He had a prior doctor appointment. But I just want to say a few words about Matt Markling. Matt's our payroll manager. Payroll is often a thankless job. We all appreciate the paychecks being deposited, but what goes on behind the scenes is constantly processing and paying. And so we appreciate Matt and all he does to ensure that our employees are paid appropriately, taxes are accounted for. But Matt not only does his job diligently, but Matt is one individual that is caring. He's hardworking, and this district is very appreciative of all he does for our district. And so, again, he couldn't make it this evening, but we appreciate Matt and all he does this evening and for our district. So thank you, Matt.
So next up, I'd like to invite Karen Johnson, Human Resources, to talk about Paula Walter, and we'll have her come to the middle.
I get the privilege of talking about Paula. Come on up. I love for you to stand right next to me. Oh. So Paula was nominated by Mrs. Richards. Yes, our superintendent. She couldn't be here tonight, so I get to fill in. So Paula plays a pivotal role as the first point of contact for many individuals interacting with our school district. And her positive attitude, helpful demeanor, and unwavering commitment to respect makes her an invaluable asset to our team. Paula's welcoming and friendly nature creates a warm and inviting atmosphere for visitors, staff, and families alike. She consistently goes above and beyond to assist everyone who walks through our doors, ensuring they feel valued and supported from the moment they arrive. Paula is an exemplary performance for our district receptionist and embodies the core values of our school district. We are fortunate to have Paula as an integral member of our team, and her contributions make a wonderful and meaningful difference in our daily operations. Thank you, Paula. Who did you bring tonight?
I have my husband, my mom, and my in-laws, and my friend Gabby.
You have a little gift? Yes.
Transportation.
Wonderful.
Thank you. John's actually going to present tonight.
Dan, come on up. Dan Kempkin. He was nominated by Tammy Henderson, and here's what she had to say. We appreciate Dan's hard work and dedication. He has a friendly, welcoming attitude, making the bus environment positive and comfortable for the students. And I would like to add that Dan has been with us for about 1.5 years, and in that time, I have found that the students and parents all give him praises and appreciate him on the bus. He is definitely the kind of employee that we wish we had everywhere. He's the kind of person we all wish we had as a friend. Dan just is that person. He's that guy. Congratulations, Dan.
Congratulations.
He handed it off quick right there.
Thank you. So today I want to recognize Dave. Come up, Dave. So Dave has always been a team player. He has a great attitude. He understands his role in the maintenance department. He keeps every project on time and on budget, and that's why I appreciate him. Thank you.
All right, I'm here. We're going to go in and get a picture together. Oh yeah, sorry. David, who'd you bring tonight?
My mom is sitting right there, Joan.
Okay, good. All right. President Anderson, normally we have a Higley Happenings. We don't have a slide this time, but I do want to recognize, and in case you guys weren't paying attention, that we had Keaton Jones, a swimmer from Higley High who graduated last year, who just qualified for the Olympics. And so he will be competing and representing the United States in Paris. Keaton is an outstanding young man, and we recognized him last year, and it's so neat to see him compete on an international stage. Upcoming events, summer's over, sorry, here we are. But if you take a look, Tuesday, July 9th, the new teachers start. We're right back in action. We have our Welcome Back rally coming on Thursday, July 18th, and then Monday, July 22nd, first day of school, and we're very excited for that. And then on the 23rd, jumping into our next board meeting. So that is our upcoming events and concludes the superintendent's report.
She might have service now.
I'm going to wait until we see if Ms. Schultz can join in the meeting. Okay, so just still working on it. And those of you that were here for the awards, we're going into business. If you want to take off, go home, get some dinner, you are more than welcome to leave. This would be a great time to do it. In the meantime, we're going to begin our public hearing presentation on the fiscal year 2024-2025 adopted budget with Mr. Moore.
All right, good evening, President Anderson, members of the board. Tonight I'm presenting pretty much our second review of the adopted budget. Previously, at the last board meeting, I presented the proposed budget. Essentially, it's the proposed adopted budget. Tonight, it's the same presentation, although I do have some couple updated slides regarding how the legislature kind of wrapped up their session. Tonight, again, looking at the adopted budget. So we are on the second iteration of this time chart. Again, Arizona School District budgets, we have about 4 different times in which we bring forth budgets to you. The June 5th, we brought forth the proposed. Tonight, we're bringing forth our adopted. This will be our budget that we take into fiscal year 25. And as I mentioned multiple times, we kind of have to anticipate enrollment or ADM. If we are off by any which way, we have opportunities to revise our budget in September and December. So looking at the adopted budget highlights, the legislative conversation, as I mentioned, the legislature did approve a state budget that passed June 15th at 10 p.m. The kind of highlights in that legislative package that was approved for specifically looking at K-12 highlights. AEL was exempted. That was just a 1-year exemption, unfortunately. So we're still, we'll be on the hook for 26. And seems like I've mentioned before, this seems like it's going to be the kind of theme, right? There's going to be annual exemptions to that aggregate expenditure limit. We were anticipated to exceed that by 1.3 billion. So that would have been another 16% in a potential cut. So that's reassuring, knowing that we can go into 25 and we'll have full budget capacity for next year. One kind of unexpected expectation was $200 million was awarded in the Building Renewal Grant Program. So as I mentioned, Higley has been a beneficiary of that. Higley High's weatherization, that painting, we were a recipient of $1.2 million from that grant fund to paint and weatherize that campus. So we will look to continue to tap into those funds and utilize their grant portal to submit up applications. And so hopefully we have some additional renewals coming in fiscal year 25 or bring forth, I guess, project approvals to the board out of that fund. So one kind of negative, the DAA funds that were appropriated in the Governor Ducey's legislation, so that 3-year appropriation of increases. We were going into year 3 of 3 of those increases. However, the legislature moved those increases to one-time funding. So what that means is we'll see the increase in 25, but immediately in 26, that will come off our budget. So we'll already start to see a capital reduction. It seems like just a reoccurring thing. Unfortunately, I felt like we were just emerging out of this, but now we'll see a capital reduction in 26 unless additional legislation changes that in the 25 year. So that's unfortunate. It, again, provides another emphasis on looking for additional capital funding. And one thing we do have on the ballot is a bond. So The other point, in the legislature, they removed the statewide kindergarten entry assessment. I can't speak to that personally, but maybe some of our education side, but that was just another point in the K-12 kind of highlights that I wanted to emphasize. One more thing I didn't include on there was I think the board, or I think everybody's kind of heard of the Quagmire kind of lawsuit and judgment. And so one thing I did kind of remove from our board agenda, I had originally a resolution on there on the last Thursday, but we pulled that. After assessing our cash balances with our levied funds, we don't anticipate needing to do any sort of resolution to tax our tax base additionally to garner the $3.4 million that we are assessed in that judgment. So we'll be able to cover that completely from our cash funds, our levied cash funds. We have enough cash on hand to cover that $3.4 million obligation from that judgment. And so Higley, again, will have no resolution brought forth to the board, as all that will be handled with our levied cash funds that we have. The known implications, these are the same pretty much that I anticipated and that were approved in the budget. And so we were proactive and put these known implications in my preliminary budget forms. So the adopted form, or the final forms that were released, the final budget forms, already had these numbers in there. So I don't anticipate needing to come back to the board in September to revise our budget, because we already are maximizing what is legislatively available to our district in terms of the K-12 budget. So the highlights of those, again, 2% inflation adjustment, that's in statute. If inflation is running above 2%, which it was about 3.5, the state legislature is obligated to at least minimally fund us 2%, which has been the practice. Estimated, again, increase in capital. They did appropriate that increase, but they moved that to one time. So we will see the increase for 25, but it'll immediately come back off in 26 unless further legislation changes that. And then again, just another bullet point. This is our last year of our fully funded M&O override, unless we renew that in November 2024. Again, that's about a $4.3 million implication to our M&O budget. It would be that first year, and then again, it's another phase down over the next 2 years. It's a total of a 3-year phase down. But the immediate impact is $4.3 million. The budget transfer, again, our practice to pay off or to continue to make our payments for our middle school leases has been to transfer M&O dollars to capital. As I mentioned, we have to pay our lease obligation from a capital fund, so we are continuing that, but we are not transferring any additional dollars for major projects. So just making that transfer, that $3.5 million, that's our principal and interest obligation for our lease payment next year, and we are just transferring that amount. So our proposed adopted budget is not changed since I last presented in June. Just to give you the highlights again, in May 8th, 2024, we revised our budget to $126 million. That included the reconciliation to 100th day ADM, which finished off at a loss of 226. That budget did have a higher transfer from M&O to capital, and which is one of the reasons why you see going to 25, kind of the budget increasing, right? We're not transferring as much dollars to capital, which in terms, those M&O dollars stay in M&O. We're projecting a 100 ADM decrease. That $128 million does include the 2% inflation. I already mentioned that the capital transfer being less than what we've previously done, again, leaving more money in M&O. And we're anticipating ending the year with $22 million in budget balance carry forward, which will be down approximately $1.5 million from where we ended prior year. So you add those together, and we'll see a FY25 proposed budget increase of $1.9 million in the M&O budget. One of the main points on the M&O budget that's on the cover page is our average teacher salary. I talked about this at the June 5th board meeting. To summarize, you may be wondering, the board just gave increases. Why are we seeing a decrease in average teacher salary? A couple of reasons. Our average teacher years of experience has decreased. In terms, we are hiring newer teachers coming in at a lower rate at a starting pay versus paying experienced teachers that have 10 or 15 years of experience, which will garner a higher salary. So those newer teachers brings the average teacher salary down. It's not an indication of not doing raises, that's just a law of averages. In addition, we had 2 very tenured teachers, again, that have an excess of 50 years of experience moving off our payroll to ESI. That's going to swing an average a lot, right? You take that big tenured teacher and move those off, you're going to swing the average quite a bit. So again, the calculation does not include supplemental pays. Again, and it does include the board-approved 1.5% increase from M&O and the 2 to 3% increase from the classroom site fund base amount. Looking at the capital budget, again, same instance. This is a statutory formula on the capital budget. It's derived from ADM. The one difference from capital to M&O is capital uses a prior year ADM calculation. Don't ask me why, it's in the rule book. So in May 8th, we revised our capital budget to $26 million. Again, it uses a prior year ADM calculation. We were transferring more M&O dollars to capital, right? So that would increase the capital budget in that prior year. Now, moving to fiscal 25, we're anticipating a capital budget, we're budgeting $15 million. Again, it uses prior year ADM funding. That includes the 4.6% increase, but you'll see a decrease in capital because we're not moving over as much from M&O to capital. So we're not transferring as much. We are transferring the 3.55. A big difference is our estimated carry forward is now down to $4 million. That was in excess of $10 million in prior years, but as the board has seen our capital plan and approves our capital plan, we're obligating those capital dollars to projects that we've identified within our scope of our capital budget. So our carry forward is now at a point where we probably won't touch that or probably bring it lower than $4 million. Within the capital budget, typically if there's an emergency, you're going to have a larger expense, right? If it's a building emergency, you're going to have a larger expense versus M&O per se. So we'll want to keep a contingency in there for those emergencies. And I feel like as we end the year, $4 million will probably be where we try to cap it. So all that in consideration, our proposed capital budget will be down to 10 million, or is being reduced by 10,700,000. But again, a lot of that 10 million being reduced is money spent towards projects, right? It's not a reduction from anything we're doing from a deficit-wise. We're using the money, right? And so we're going to see a reduction in funding in the budget calculation. So looking at the budget calendar, again, we're in the adopted budget phase. There's very little change from the proposed. And previously I mentioned there may be a potential to come back in September and revise the budget, but as I've kind of stated, we have the final budget forms. I've already included the estimated increases that I was 99% sure would take place in the preliminary forms that were approved on June 5th. So there's no, we will not be back in September 15th because the forms in the budget that you're approving that are on the agenda tonight are pretty much maximizing the district's budget based on the state K-12 budget that was approved by the legislature. So there was a chance that we were hoping, optimistic that there could have been appropriated more money for K-12, but that was not the case. We were kind of held flat. And so what is on the agenda tonight is our final budget for 25, unless, again, we revise later in the year of 25 based on ADM movement and what we've estimated. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
President Anderson, Mr. Moore. Now, I just want to mention about the lawsuit in Maricopa County that's forcing school districts to have to pay back all this property taxes. And I think Higley's portion is about $11 million.
3.4 million.
Sorry. Lots of districts owe money. So how is that impacting our budget? I think that was Mesa's amount. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, like as I stated earlier, it's not affecting our budget capacity at all. So we're going to be using levied cash that's sitting at the county treasurer to kind of fund that obligation that the district owes. Statutorily, they cannot affect our budget. They can't tap our budget limit because our budget's formula controlled. And so every year we levy funds via our property taxes, right? Our levy funds sit at the county treasurer. We do have excess funds to satisfy that judgment. And so that is what we're going to utilize.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? It's open to the public now if there's anybody that would like to come forward and ask questions. It's for each one. Oh, I didn't know. That's okay. Okay, then we will now move on to 6.2, the public hearing for the instructional time model, and this one will be presented by Mr. Berkshire.
Good evening, President Anderson, members of the board, members of the public. If my presentation comes up. Tonight, this is our second required public hearing related to updating our instructional time model as a district. As I said last time, ARS 15-901.08 gives us the ability to adopt an instructional time model that provides some flexibility in the method and the manner in which instructional hours are provided to students. We have some students in very unique attendance situations, primarily our homebound, our chronic illness students, our students that are enrolled in HLC and HTAP as well, that a alternative method of tracking attendance is preferred. Gives us some flexibility with those students. For example, with our homebound students, those are students that receive instruction at home. Typically, it's an hour a day. But if they are unable to receive that in-person instruction on that day, we can't count those minutes currently. And so adopting an instructional time model will allow us to say, on this particular day, they're unable to access the in-person learning, but they could access learning through Canvas, for example, and count that time on Canvas for that particular student. We are really looking at making sure that these are for very specialized, unique attendance situations that are different than a normal attendance situation where a student is absent and they're doing makeup work afterwards. The requirements for the instructional time model, we have to identify what the modes of instruction are, how are we going to track attendance, and again, the public comment through the 2 required public hearings. For us, what we are proposing is that our typical mode of instructions is in person. Through the instructional time model, we are proposing that there be options for students to receive those hours necessary through remote instruction. They may also do so through mastery-based learning. We see that primarily benefiting our HLC students who work with APEX, which is an online competency-based system. And then project-based learning, that one we believe our HTAP students will be able to primarily access and benefit them. It can also be a variety of these different, a hybrid of these different modes. And we've provided you with some documentation that is very initial in terms of draft as to how that might be set up at the site level. Tracking attendance, if currently in-person students are tracked in K6 daily, 7/12 by period. If students are engaged in the remote, currently with our Higley Virtual Academy, parents track their students' hours and they document that within Synergy. We would do something very similar with students on the instructional time model with the hybrid. Mastery-based learning, again, through APEX there is anticipated time on task, basically, that they're expected to do, and they receive credit once they successfully pass that end of unit module kind of thing. So we would identify what those minutes are, and by successfully passing that, they would receive those minutes. Project-based learning, similarly, we would identify what kind of timeline that project should be expected to take for a typical student, and then upon completion of milestones throughout that project, we would then provide that time and communicate that to ADE. In terms of assessment, classroom assessment would be identified in that initial contract based on the mode of instruction between the teacher and the student and administration. Could be virtual, could be in person, could be a hybrid of both. District and state assessments, the requirement would be that they would take those state assessments and district assessments in person at their home site. So that's pretty much it again. Open to questions.
President Anderson, I just have one quick question for, excuse me, for the one for athletes. It states that they have to be out 3 consecutive days a month. So if, let's say, 1 month they're not out, then they don't qualify?
So the way we have modeled this is really anticipating students that are participating athletically in things like an Olympic development program, where they are out every month, a specified number of days every month. We want to ensure that they have that continuity of learning and that they don't hit that 18 mark and be identified as chronically absent. Students that are involved in typical sports activities where there are tournaments where they may be gone 1 or 2 times every couple of months, we believe that our current system of providing them with makeup work, working with the teacher on an individual basis, should accommodate them in that way. We're really looking at those students that are elite students that they're going to be out on a very consistent basis and making sure that they still have the ability to participate in learning with their classmates and not have to make choices about where they're going to go and how they're going to make all of that up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, this is now open for the public comment or question. Does anybody like to come forward?
Can you turn the mic on?
For homebound, I believe we had 8 homebound students last year. So this would be a very small number of students that would be impacted by this.
And then, given the proposal or the model with the athletes in different situations, do you have an estimated how many students we could have? You're looking at a range of 50, 100, 10?
I don't. I can say that every year we have 1 or 2 students at each of the high schools that attend a program through, for example, Harvard or Yale, where that requires them to miss the first month of school. So this could potentially be an option for them because right now we have to, there's a lot of work that we have to do on the back end. We have not had a chance to sit down with our site administrators to really work through that process and make sure that we've got it put in place. So initially, we believe this is really going to be applied to our homebound students and our chronically ill students as we work through the process and make sure that we're doing best for all of our students.
Sure, you mentioned HVA currently does the remote already. The mastery based and project based, do any of those currently exist or are those new programs that will be developed?
So our students that are enrolled at HLC, they currently work through a program called Apex. And it's basically a self-paced online program. So they are engaged in learning through online lessons, activities, and then there's usually an end of unit assessment that they take within Apex. So that would be very similar to that's what we believe would be a mastery-based learning process. Frequently with our HLC students, these are students in an alternative setting program that need some adjustments related to their attendance due to their unique circumstances. So allowing us to use Apex and the time anticipated on Apex to ensure that we're being able to say they're meeting the minutes that we expect them to meet and be appropriately reimbursed by the state for those, we believe is a much better option than what we're currently doing. HTAP is our transitional program, and Shauna can probably describe it a little bit better than I can. But those students are really involved in project-based learning, from my understanding. They are out in the community doing some kind of work-based learning, and so we believe we can use this model again to better identify these are the hours that they're engaged in those projects and more accurately report to the state our minutes.
Excellent, thank you. You mentioned Apex currently does the kind of mastery-based. Would they be the same, would we use Apex going forward, or with this new proposal, would we be revamping that?
I would anticipate we'd continue to use Apex. We've found a lot of success with that program, so I don't anticipate us looking at to purchase something different.
The last question I have, you mentioned that it's open to athletes or people who are in special academic programs. Could a family come and appeal to, for example, let's say it's a family business and they would like the child to work in that family business and they want to be absent a certain number of days? Are there special cases that can be approved, or how is that regulated?
That brings up a good point. We hadn't looked at those kinds of situations. So I do remember I used to have a family that they owned a vineyard in Utah, and they would go and spend time there during the course of the year. It's something that we can look at as we work to develop the final form that our site administrators will use. We believe this would be initiated by a family, by sites identifying families that have come to them, or they've seen that students are missing a lot of school, frequently with chronic illness. That's how it works, is we notice this child has been out an awful lot. Conversations with the parents, we determine there's something going on in terms of an illness, and they work with their physician and the school to create a chronic illness plan, basically. It would be very similar in these kinds of situations, we believe. It's a case-by-case, very unique, gives us some flexibility where something comes up that we would negatively impact that student's ability to continue in school.
Sorry, I thought of one last question. You mentioned that there are on-site, in-person requirements for testing and things like that. Students with disabilities or chronic illnesses, are they required to come to the sites?
So our goal is to bring them in to test on site. Frequently, especially our homebound students, that's not, they're unable to do that, and we don't ask them to do that. But we do want to set it up as an expectation that if you are able to attend in person, then we want you here in person so we can proctor that appropriately.
And the follow-up question to that, you mentioned, using your example of a family with a farm or a vineyard in another state, could out-of-state students take advantage of this program?
No, they would have to be enrolled in our schools, and in order to enroll in our schools, they have to have that affidavit of where they live, and so they have to be within the state of Arizona. I don't believe we'd be able to do anything with out-of-state students.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We're going to reconvene in open session. I want to confirm before we move forward, was Ms. Schultz able to join us, Ms. Zimmerman? No. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to request to speak. We value input from our constituents. This time on our agenda has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Those that wish to speak should have filled out speaker cards, which are due prior to the start of our meeting. Members of the board may not discuss, comment, or take action on matters raised that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01I, action taken As a result, a public comment may be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Also, we ask that audience members practice proper public meeting decorum, refraining from either negative or positive responses, including clapping or verbal outbursts, to ensure fairness to all points of view. Those that refuse to follow these rules may be asked to leave. In accordance with policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings, if considered necessary, the governing board president shall set a time limit on the length of the comment period. In order to ensure that each individual has an opportunity to address the board, the president may also set a time limit for individual speakers. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, first to speak is Kathleen Richards.
Good evening, board and members of administration. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to ask, I have been looking through all of the different personnel items that have come up on the last several agendas, and I feel like I am seeing a trend of exodus, whether it is at an administrative level, particularly it seems in the K-6 crew, but just in general. And I have paid attention to jobs within Higley District in part because I have a wide network of really experienced, awesome teacher friends. And I am always looking to pull as many awesome teachers into this district selfishly as a parent to participate in the education of my own kids, as well as the kids within our district in general. And I worry that part of what is happening is that our teacher base does not always feel the level of commitment and support from the very top, whether that means the dais, whether that means administration, that they are finding opportunities and there isn't a strong enough pull for them to stay here. And over the last 18 months, there's definitely been an increase in openings here in Higley. And the same way that during the Citizens Committee, I asked the team with Tyler to take a look at, we weren't necessarily tracking why students are leaving. There's a lot of discussion in the strategic plan about marketing and retention. And as much as we need to retain our students, obviously, and we want to pull as many students as we possibly can in here from the charter schools because we have a lot to offer and we have amazing opportunities here within Higley School District, I would encourage and ask as a community member and as a parent here that we are being proactive in understanding why teachers are leaving. Teachers are leaving across the country. It is not a great time to be a teacher. It is hard in the classrooms. But what can we do as a team here on Team Higley to make sure that we are keeping those who are really representing the best of the best, because that will influence our ability to keep students here as well. So that was just my ask. I hope everyone's having a great summer, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Sarah Jarman.
Good evening, members of the school board. I'm here today to advocate for the importance of listening to parental input when it comes to decisions regarding our children's education. As parents, we are the primary caregivers and advocates for our children, and it is crucial that our voices are heard and respected in the decision-making process. Parents have a unique perspective on their children's needs, abilities, and interests. We are intimately involved in their daily lives and are keenly aware of what is best for them. By listening to parental input and taking our concerns into consideration, the school board can ensure that decisions are made with the best interest of the children at heart. It is essential that parents are included in this decision-making process and given opportunity to provide feedback on issues that impact their child's education. We are the ones who know our children's best and can offer valuable insight and perspective that helps shape those policies and programs that will ultimately benefit all the students. I urge the school board to prioritize these parental rights and actively seek out and listen to the input of the parents when making decisions that, again, affect the children's education. By working together, we can create a school district that values and respects the voice of parents and ultimately provides the best possible education for our children. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Mindy Brocker.
Hey, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to speak today. I will apologize in advance for not being properly prepared, but it is summer, and really, unlike everybody who's spoken tonight, I do have 3 kids in this district. 2 of them will, I hope, attend Higley schools from kindergarten through graduation. And I just wanted to come out here on the last meeting of this academic year, I suppose, maybe the next to last, and say thank you. Thank you to the board for all the work that you guys put in. It's a lot of hours, it's a lot of work. We appreciate you. Thank you to the administration who puts together curriculum, HR, payroll, just keeps this whole machine moving. It's a great machine. We sincerely appreciate you. I mostly, though, want to thank the site administration and staff who pour their blood, sweat, and tears into our children. Over the course of this year alone, I've had children in AP classes, dual enrollment classes, special education classes. We've had kids in band. I've had kids in drama. And I'm a very lazy parent, and still my kids get all these opportunities. So I've talked to so many teachers that have loved on my children and cared for my children, taught my children, and made them think. So I just wanted to take this last opportunity this summer to say to fulfill my promise of positivity and to say, well, we appreciate you, we value you, we look forward to next year, and thank you and have a great summer.
Thank you. Next, we have Heather Balch.
Good evening, Governing Board and Cabinet. Before I get into what I prepared, I just wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Lotzenheimer had said during Higley Happenings. Is that what we're calling it? Alyssa Colbert, she is the 2021 Williamsfield graduate. She made it to the semifinals for the Olympic trials in the 100-meter. And so I was really proud of her, and I think Higley should be as well. Tonight, the board has the opportunity to vote on the MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding between the Higley Education Association and our district. Last year, there was lengthy discussion about this topic. I actually went back and watched it today. And I just wanted to highlight a few things. An MOU is a professional agreement between, in our district, Higley Education Association, and our district administration. This allows the 2 parties to work together collaboratively throughout the year in order to ensure our students receive the best education experience possible. When teachers and staff are supported and provided with the appropriate resources, our students are the ones who ultimately benefit. If the MOU were not in place, teachers would not have an avenue in which to share their needs with district admin. That'd be really challenging for Karen to receive several different calls on many different topics. And so we work together to work through meet and confer process to share those concerns with our district admin. I fear that if we did not have an agreement and a process in place, that those issues and concerns would just end at the site level. But we're able to work together to provide success across our district. I would like you to vote yes on this agreement tonight so that our district can continue to be a leader in supporting teachers that support our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Kent.
President Anderson and members of the board, thank you very much. This is a response to several speakers at the last meeting. Unfortunately, my wife cannot be here, but I am reading an email that was provided to some of the board and to the Williams Field administration. I'm a proud parent of 4 children in HUSD schools, starting their attendance in kindergarten. They are currently at Cooley and Williams Field. I do my best to let teachers teach. I believe the best foundation we can give youth is a strong education and a moral compass. I let schools guide the first part and do my very best to guide the second. Last week, my older kids came home sharing about Mr. Boy being put on leave, and it had to do with a book. My first comments were, really? 3 weeks before finals? His poor students. When I asked what book, they just replied, on level classes. It could be different than ours. Coincidentally, at the same time, my husband pointed out a post on the neighborhood Facebook group calling for action at the next school board meeting because of the offensive, inappropriate nature of banned books being required reading at Williams Field High School. So explicit, she said she couldn't even finish reading. I was a bit surprised. I have found Williams Field High School English department to be exemplary, and I am well aware of the process the teachers follow, providing the list of reading materials, requiring permission slips for mature content, and the ability to work with them on alternative materials if requested. In any given year, I have had to sign a syllabus, assignments, and book-specific permission slips. So my husband and I got to work inquiring about the book titles. 3 of them have been read by someone in our household, as well as books by one of the other authors. We were a little stunned when the poster provided us with a full copy of Mr. Parrish's complaint letter. First, the letter outlines that the process works. But at a greater issue, I believe his letter is the perfect example of why the subject matter of these texts are needed in today's curriculum. There is nothing woke about preparing children to think and act in a world that sadly is full of these experiences and people that have lived these situations. This guardian included an excerpt offended by graphic description of sex, missing the point that it is sexual abuse and rape. Rape of a teenage girl by her boyfriend is relevant and real possibility for teen girls, regardless of their innocence. In fact, millions of people, male and female, regardless of gender, have faced intimate partner violence during their teens. The fact he saw sex is part of the problem. I have no issue raising concerns to the school and district. I am not only an advocate for my kids, but for the public schools. I have other commitments with my children and cannot be present at school board meeting to voice my support of the school and teacher. Please accept this letter as my heartfelt support for Mr. Boy and the Williams Field English and Social Studies departments. It was the Williams Field High School English department teacher that encouraged my oldest son to pursue honors courses. He is graduating in a couple of weeks. Proud he has learned and ready to take a challenge of higher education in a broader, more diverse world than Gilbert, Arizona. He is armed with a strong foundation built at home, in our community, and at Williams Field. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. I motion that to approve consent agenda items 8.1 to 8.29. Second it. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right, Mr. Lotzenheiser, do you have some introductions tonight?
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Yes, we have some people here today that you just approved to become members of our administrative team. And so we're going to have their supervisors go ahead and introduce them tonight to you. And so first, Mr. Walker.
President Anderson, members of the board, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Mr. Stephen Reed as our new Assistant Director of Student Services. He comes to this department. We welcome him to this department with many years of Higley experience working with students in various capacities, most recently as coordinator for special ed, as a behavior specialist assisting our sites, and he'll be a great addition to the student services team. Welcome aboard.
Mr. Moore.
Good evening, President Anderson, members of the board. Tonight I have the honor of introducing Mr. John Stone as the new Assistant Director of Transportation. So John is a hardworking, people-oriented person. He's most recently served as a field trip coordinator in transportation, has been within the district for 10 years. I do also want to plug, he was a Higley Leadership Academy participant, so another kudos to Mr. Walker and the program that he runs. So congrats, John.
And Mr. Armstrong.
All right, President Anderson, members of the board, we're super excited. You just approved the new assistant principal at Coronado Elementary School, Mrs. Alice Stortini. I have to correct myself because she's a recent graduate with her doctoral degree from NAU, so a huge congratulations to you, Dr. Stortini. It's a pleasure. Dr. Sortini comes to us from a couple of other districts with 23 years of experience in education, where she served as a teacher, an instructional coach at the site level, at the district level. She served as an administrator for the summer school program in her other district. And I will tell you that she is super excited to go ahead and start connecting with the Coronado Elementary staff, students, and community. Mr. Griggs and his committee that came together, I'm telling you, they are bragging about her. So let's be prepared. And Dr. Sortini, welcome to Higley Unified School District. All right, I have the mic for one more. We are here to recognize and honor, it's a privilege to say this, but Mrs. Amanda Day is the new principal at Centennial Elementary School. Ms. Day has been with the district for 11 years, serving as a teacher, served as an instructional coach, and has served as the dean of students, as well as her most recent position at HT as the assistant principal. And I will tell you, she is super excited to go ahead and get involved with Centennial Elementary, that school community, and continue to make the great strides that they are. So welcome, and we're very proud and honored to have you serving as principal. Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to the students and the staff and the whole district, the whole community. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to 9.1 under information items for the school calendars presentation for 2025 to 2026, 2026 to 2027, 2027 to 2028 school years.
President Anderson, members of the board, I had the opportunity to facilitate the calendar task team this year, and this is an opportunity I have not had in the past. So I was really excited to be able to be a part of this and learn some new things. And tonight I'm going to present to you kind of how we came about the decisions we did, talk a little bit about the team, and the process that we went through. So we were tasked with developing school calendars for the 25-26, 26-27, and 27-28 school year. Originally, this sounded like an easy task, no problem. I never realized how much turmoil leap year could cause you. So it took me about 40 minutes to figure out where an extra day came from, because I could not count for quite some time. So it actually opened my eyes up to a lot of different areas in the district that are affected by the school calendar and allowed me to facilitate that discussion with a wide group of people. Our team members came from many different departments, and all these stakeholders had brought something to the table to facilitate this discussion. Because of this, we were able to really dive into all of the things we needed to take into consideration when looking at the calendars, from transportation to the payroll calendar to our classified staff, all the different pieces. And so it created quite the discussion in the meetings that we had, and we did a really good job of respectfully disagreeing with each other and being collaborative, talking about the concerns that we felt staff would have, the community would have, and how we could address those concerns as the team. When doing this, we came up with quite a few discussion topics. Those included professional development days, The high school late start was a huge discussion that we had for quite some time. We talked about middle school and the opportunity that they have for professional development and the need for an early release, more early release opportunities for them. We talked about transportation and how our decisions were going to be affected by we're going to affect transportation, all kinds of things. In this process, one thing that the team was adamant about is while we had all of these stakeholders at the table, they felt that it was really important that we get additional input from our community and staff, that we felt we really wanted to hear from them. And so as a team, we talked about the topics we felt they would be most concerned with, and we developed a survey that we sent out to the community as well as all of the staff. We were pretty excited about the response rate that we got. Now, is it great? Absolutely. I mean, not as great as we'd like considering the size of our community. But in comparison to other surveys that we have sent out in the past, we felt that we got a really good response rate. Here you can see the response that we got to the questions we identified we felt would be the most important to get the input from. The first one was the middle school early release Wednesday. As you can see, the staff were predominantly said, yes, we need this time for professional development, consistent professional development that's planned and targeted and continues on a consistent basis. Just for reference, the NA means that the staff that, because we couldn't differentiate, if they did not teach middle school, they did not respond to that. And then for parents, you can see too that we had parents from middle school were also in support of the early release Wednesdays. So the next question was having the Wednesday before Thanksgiving be a non-school day. I did a little bit of research at looking at our surrounding districts, and we are one of the few that have school on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Historically, our attendance is not great on that day. And so as you can see, what we were recommending kind of aligned with what staff were thinking as well as parents. Beginning of the year soft start. So when we looked at other districts offering opportunities for professional development that were full day PD days, the way that they are able to do that is by having a soft start. And what that means is instead of starting on a Monday, you would start midweek the week before, which then gives you extra days within the calendar year for those professional development days. And again, as you can see, the yeses still outweighed the nos. We did have some parents that were no, and they were able to put in comments, but overwhelmingly, the support was in the yes area. The discontinue high school late start on Wednesdays was an area that we wanted staff input on. In our questions this week, so the late start, the high schools were starting at 7:40 versus 7:25, so it was a 15-minute difference. We spent a lot of time as a team talking about those late start Wednesdays. Were they being beneficial at this point? And the committee overwhelmingly felt like we would like to discontinue those moving forward. So one thing that did come out in our discussions was we truly felt that the teachers needed an addition of 2 professional development days. And those would be added to the calendar on the Mondays we return from fall break and winter break. And so that is one of the recommendations that you see on the calendars that we're pulling forward. The other recommendation that came pretty strong from the team was that while these calendars are just for the 25, 26, 26, 27, and 27, 28 school year, they would like to see the late starts end next year and not wait another full year to do that. And so they would also ask that the board consider doing that change to the 24-25 school year. So, any questions?
President Anderson? Silly to think that the calendar would not be. No. The calendars are, it seems like a simple task, but it is not. There's a lot that goes into it. I'm going to respect all the work you guys did for sure, and I will support this. I am going to express my concern on the 25-26 school year of starting July 17th. That when we creeped back and starting in July, which was in the late 20s of July, that was one thing. And then things started creeping a little bit earlier in the 20s, and now we're at July 17th. And there's a huge difference between 2025 and 26, and then 26 and 27, because I see we go back to at least we're in the 20s. I have a huge concern all the way around. One, I think I counted in it's 7 weeks. And so from a staff perspective, we have a lot that occurs during the summer. There's a lot of summer camps. And when I say summer camps, I mean like you have football camp, you have band camp, you have Stuco camps. And so those usually occur in that earlier part of July, that mid-July before school starts. And so we're putting an added burden, asking our teachers to come back even earlier. I respect that you asked the question about a soft start, but I don't know that if it indicated we'll be starting that much earlier even in that question, because I think that that's a big thing.
Yeah. So, Board Member Reese, because as I was developing this and counting days over and over and over again, I noticed that early start date. And it took me a while to figure out why is that date so much earlier than the other calendars. And so I actually plotted this out 6 years, and then I went 6 years in the rears to kind of see, and it is a trend. Every third year, you're going to get an early July. And the reason is, if you look at Memorial Day, it fluctuates up. And so 1 year Memorial Day is the 25th, and the next year it's the 31st. So there's quite a big change in that. And so every third year you're gonna see that. And the committee talked about this quite a bit, and they felt that it was so important that teachers get out before Memorial Day and not have to return after Memorial Day, that they felt they would be willing to compromise that early start date in July.
And I respect that for teachers, but we have to remember families too.
Yeah.
And that doesn't leave a huge time also. And I think too, speaking to several different schools and people in administration or offices, we already see a higher absenteeism at the beginning of our school years because we start so early, and families have family reunions who people are back east and they're still on their summer. I mean, their summer all through August. And so our families are still taking their vacations. So this particular year is going to creep in even more so. And I think that we're gonna see even a larger attendance concern at the beginning of that school year. So like I said, I know there's a lot of work, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of considerations. And I love that we're putting in additional professional development days and things like that. And just for future, because I know these are 3 years in advance, just my 2 cents, I would much rather see some of that time come off of the 2-week break versus starting earlier. Similar to the soft start, maybe go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then have Thursday, Friday, and then the whole next week, but then you have some days you can take from, instead of having those 2 solid weeks for fall and spring. And then we can still start a little bit later in the summer there, and not creep into some of those breaks, because next year is going to be tough. It really is. But I just wanted to express my concern with that. Thank you for the proposal of the late starts. That certainly did not go as it was seen and intended. So I know it's a lot of hard work, and I appreciate the committee and everyone who came together, because it's not easy. So thank you for all that. I just wanted to express my concern for the next year. And I'm sure plotting it out may look very different, because even looking at Memorial Day for the end of that school year, I think I looked and it was like the 25th, but then for the 26th, and it was the 24th. It was only a day earlier. So it's like, wait, we have a huge discrepancy on when we start. And when you just look at the 2 years, there's only a day difference in Memorial Day. So it must, like you said, plotting it out, have a much bigger trend there. So
Yeah, and I was able to see that when I couldn't find The leap year.
Leap year, yes. Thank you.
President Anderson. First, Ms. Miller, to piggyback off Board Member Reese, I appreciate all the work that you did as well as everybody else that took the time to be at the committee, because it is definitely something that is a gargantuan task. As far as the summer, I hear you on that, especially being in a place where they had 10-week summer. One thing that I can tell you is a lot of places, not just in Arizona, we know our neighboring districts are doing the same. A lot of places, even on the East Coast, are starting to do the same thing in terms of going back earlier and earlier. Granted, they're still in August, but their summer was 10 weeks prior to. And so I noticed the same thing, ultimately. My biggest concern, which was the concern I put forth, and so I would like to just address it again. From the teacher perspective, they have 3 days to prep their classroom. And one of the first things that routinely happened when we moved back all those years ago was a loss of prep days. And so I guess my question is, what are we doing at an admin level to ensure that our sites are creating the space and respecting that time for our teachers to make sure that they can get their classroom set up and all of those types of things? Because 3 days is not a lot of time to get all of those things, especially at the elementary level when you also have meet the teacher night that you have to prep for. But like, I mean, you have copies, you've got things that you need to make, and I just want to make sure that we're doing something to protect that time.
Board Member Wade, when we were looking at the calendar, that was one of the discussion topics that we talked about quite a bit. And of course, you know, high school teachers had a much different perspective than our elementary school teachers and what that looked like. We also talked about when the meet the teacher night was and what that looked like. And one thing that we agreed to is that we will be speaking with administrators at the admin retreat this year to talk about what those 3 days look like, to ensure that only the most necessary things are shared with them and that they are given ample time, and to make sure to save those non-emergency, non-immediate topics for either their regularly scheduled staff meetings or that first early release in July.
Sorry, one other thing, because talking to somebody who actually was on the committee from a teacher perspective, because I know we have all of those lovely videos that we have to go through every year, you know, like don't touch the blood with your fingers, those types of things. Is it possible that we could, because I know now it's all just online, right? Like you have like a big chunk, it's a little bit different than when I still taught here, but is it possible to give that, like when I worked in Maryland, once you had your signed contract, they gave us like a week before school or even longer, they would send it out. From my understanding, I know we increased the length of time that they can do it, but I just didn't know if that was like an option.
That's James.
Sure, Board Member Wade, through Vector Solutions, that's our training portal that we use. One of the things we're looking at is, one, making sure that the modules on there are compliance necessary and they're not overwhelming the staff with training that can be shared in a different manner. But then two, every year we open it up on July 1st. It gets a little bit tricky because people aren't expected to be working, but that is the communication that's going out last year and it's going to go out again in the next couple hours. Is that as of July 1st, it's up and running and it's accessible. And then we don't have a hard deadline immediately. We are flexible and cognizant of the time it takes to complete the courses, and we can work with sites and individuals specifically to get it done that best suits their needs.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No other
Thank you.
comments? Thank you. And thank you to everyone that was on the committee and put in their time and effort. And it's nice to see that it's so far out, so people can plan well in advance. Okay, we're going to be moving into 9.2, Policy IGA, Curriculum Development, first read with Mr. Lotzenheiser. I apologize.
If you'd like to give me an honorary doctorate, I would happily accept it. That would save me a lot of time. I've already spent the money, but that would save me some time. Anyway, these next three information items were coming to you on the first reads. Remember, when we look at policies, we like to do a first read so that we could give your hear your input from it as we come then back next meeting for a second read when we look at these three policies. You'll notice that when we went through the changes and we looked at changing the policies, we're going to the ASBA language because we needed to add some things to make sure that our policies were compliant with state statute. And so you'll see those changes in there. So I just wanted to say that for the next three, that's what they are. And now we'll go through each of them individually as we look. And so our first one is IGA, curriculum development. And you'll notice the blue that was added in there, just making sure that we're compliant when we do look for this curriculum development, that meetings of board authorized textbook selection committees, that's what it's really specifically about, is our textbook selection shall comply with open meeting law requirements, and that's where you see the statute that's going to be required there. The rest of these policies stayed the same, but we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with our policy going through that process. So we can stop here. We can have questions on this one. I do have Mary Davis in here to help and support to answer questions as we go through these policies.
Any questions or comments on the policy IGA? Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is 9.3 then, our policy IGD, the curriculum adoption. You'll notice the one that we had, I'm pretty sure it was from 2001. And so when we go to make changes, you'll see the new one. The new one is directly from state statute, and that's what it's following. And so to make sure that we're compliant with it, we're just adding that language, again, about textbook selection committees, open meeting law, but then what we're going to look at with the instruction, looking at the curriculum adoption. This is directly from state statute. So if you were to look at it, you would see these listed out directly from there, once again, making us compliant through that process.
President Anderson, so all the bullet points are from the state statute.
The letters are
Yes.
If we look at the, yeah, the
Sorry,
ABCD,
the letter.
Yeah, that's specifically spelled out. In the state statute. So
I'm just wondering if, so prohibited instruction, should that include, and I don't know if it references the ARS statute at the bottom, but as far as explicit content and the prohibition of explicit content?
Not to my knowledge, this section, and Mary, if you want to add that.
President Anderson and Vice President Van Hook, not in that particular policy, because this one is about curriculum adoption. The next policy that we'll get into is IJJ, which would include that particular ARS statute.
All right, so now let's jump into the third one, IJJ, textbook and supplementary material selection adoption. As we went through this and tried to go red line, blue line, there was just too much to try to combine them together, and so that's why you'll see the red-lined policy completely removed. And then we're looking to add, again, the ASBA direct policy language from the policy from ASBA. And so I'm going to go ahead and Mary jump in and talk a little bit about IJJ.
So the big updates with IJJ is really giving us the opportunity to have a committee come together, especially when we're looking at novels and supplementary materials. So we'll have committees formed for those. We'll really dig into this in our next board meeting and have that 60-day review. So I'll turn it over if there's any specific questions, but as Mr. Lotzenheiser mentioned, it is tied directly to the state statutes as well.
President Anderson, Ms. Davis, can you remind me the statute that refers to the prohibition of sexually explicit material?
President Anderson and Vice President Van Hook, as I was looking through it, I did notice it's not listed in this one. It is ARS 15120.3. It is not listed in this policy, but the way that we have built out our guidance, it is very explicit about how we would utilize materials like that.
Okay. I want to make sure that that's included so that it's very clear that it is against the law to have sexually explicit material in our schools.
Yes, and we'll cover what that statute says and with literary merit when we go over the guidelines for our novel selection.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So for clarity, under the legal references, that statute will get added, is that what I'm understanding?
I'm sorry, President Anderson, I could not hear you.
Oh, I apologize. Under the legal references, will it get added to the list of statutes?
Absolutely,
If
we
it's
can take a look
referenced,
at adding that. And our goal is with this first read for you guys to have exposure, to give us feedback on it. When we come back in the second read and we come back at the end of July, we're also looking at bringing back our processes so that we can explain them to you more about our curriculum adoption and supplementary material adoptions.
Thank you.
President Anderson, just a quick question. So it's referencing, we've always had a 60-day review period, is that correct?
For curriculum adoptions.
Okay, and it was my understanding we also had a book committee. Has that not taken place?
That was prior to my being here, there was one, and I don't know at what point that did not exist, so we are bringing that back to make sure that we have community involvement from schools and the general community of Higley.
Okay, because to my knowledge, we had a committee who reviewed any novels, any books, who they could provide input for anything, and then we had a list that for our schools and our teachers that these have been reviewed and approved, that they may use them. If it was not on that list, they could do a special request requesting this book. So just kind of getting the vibe, is that not what's been happening?
President Anderson and Member Reese, we will really go into this on July 23rd, but we do have that list that teachers are utilizing of approved books or approved novels for secondary teachers, and we have it all detailed out as to how teachers would select those books and even put forward a request for how they can add novels to that list going forward.
President Anderson, Ms. Davis, will you guys discuss at the next meeting how that committee is put together? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Regarding the textbook or the supplemental reading materials, there was concern regarding the permission slip, is it permission, am I saying that right? Is there permission slip?
Yeah, permission slip, parent
Okay.
notification.
How it was worded or the information provided, I don't know if this would be the right policy. Is that something that's going to be standard, the language on it? Is it going to be revamped? What's given out to parents, is it going to stay the same? And would that something, if it's going to be standard, is that something we can make an exhibit to this policy?
So the goal is, yes, when we come back on the next meeting in July, that we'll have that and be able to share that with you about all of the different things, not only the selection process and what that's going to make sure that things are on the list and approved appropriately through a committee process, but then what is the communication going forward in terms of to parents as well.
Okay, thank you.
President Anderson, is this policy coming back to us at the next meeting for approval?
Yes.
Okay, because it seems like, I mean, it's hard to sit here and read a policy and then what we're hearing and seeing and things like that. It seems like having that information might help. So I don't know if that's the first time we're hearing this. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know that I would recommend, unless there's a time crunch on it, that it be put for maybe a second read, but not necessarily an approval if we're getting a whole lot more information that goes with these policies. Okay. So just throwing it out there because it sounds like we're going to have a lot more information, so.
Yeah, I will consult with Superintendent Richards on that.
Any other questions or comments?
I was just going to say that if we could have another informational item to be able to fully go through the additional information that's going to be shared with us next meeting, instead of having it a second read, but have it actually be another informational item so that we have the opportunity to see everything on one policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our action items for 10.1. I move to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 2024-2025 proposed expenditure budget. Are there any questions or comments, anything we want to do before? Just a second. Okay. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right, 10.2. The meal price increase for fiscal year 2025. I move to approve the meal price increases for fiscal year 2025.
President Anderson, if I may, members of the board, I specifically pushed this to action so I can just give you a little context. But these meal prices increases, the meal prices are strictly regulated by ADE, the Arizona Department of Education, their Nutrition Service Department. We are 60 cents below where we are required to be, but they only require us to minimally increase by 10 cents, which is, we are recommending the increase to 15 cents to try to not catch up, but really kind of get and meet between the differences between what we are paying for food and what we are charging. So if we continue to be well below the average, we're going to potentially get to a point where we'll be subsidizing our food service program with operational dollars. It won't be self-sustaining. So that is why we're recommending increase slightly above what we're mandated to increase. So.
Thank you for explaining that. And we had Anna second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Item 10.3, the approval of the instructional time model. Second. I motion to approve the instructional time model. Second. All those in favor? Aye. 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 Motion carries 4-0. 10.4. Yes.
I just want to clarify, President Anderson, Mr. Berkshire, will there be additional changes to this model, or is this pretty much set?
So by approving the instructional time model, you've deputized me to go to ADE, and they have a form on their website that we fill out, and basically the information in that form is what was in the PowerPoint slide. The details of how we will implement and that contract and all of that, that's not something that ADE really that they don't ask for that. So all we do is we submit, here are the modes of instruction, and here's how we're gonna track attendance, and we say that we had our 2 public hearings, and I hit submit. And at that point in time, we've given them that we have a new instructional model. It's very vague as to how ADE then, that they don't really monitor it. It's on us to monitor our ITM at that point in time. They just need to know that we have one.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, moving on to 10.4, the 2024-2025 Governing Board Initiatives. I motion to approve the 2024-2025 Governing Board Initiatives. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0. 10.5, approval of the 2024-2025 school calendar, removing late starts at the high schools. I motion to approve this calendar with the removal of late starts at the high schools. And a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0. 10.6, approval of school calendars for 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28 school years. Without reading that again, I motion to approve. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We are on 10.7, the approval of the MOU between the Higley Unified School District and the Higley Education Association.
President Anderson?
Yes.
I have some questions. I guess maybe just some clarifications. We had on our questions and answers, I think what came out, what confused me more than reading. So I'm just trying to get clarification on the 30-minute uninterrupted or non-duty time for lunches. Is that, how is that going to be handled from, is it site to site? Is it, how are we going to handle that?
Board Member Reese, through the negotiation process with the HEA, the lunchtime is going to be handled by the site, but if the employee is not given the lunchtime because there is some specific reason that they could not get a lunch, then they would be granted that time to leave early after the students have left for the day.
Okay, so I guess my clarification is that it is in the case that we are unable to provide it, not in the case of somebody choosing not to take it.
That is correct.
So we should not be having people choose not to take time we're giving and say, no, I'm just gonna work it, I'm gonna just work through it, I'm gonna work in my classroom so then I can leave early, because we do have contract time.
Yes, that is correct. And this is not an option for employees to take it or not. For the teachers, it is, if they are not able to take it that specific day, then they are allowed to leave after the students leave.
Okay.
This is not, I go early, I leave early.
That's where I wanted to seek clarification, because I don't want it to be interpreted as, well, if I just don't take a 30-minute, if I just choose to work in my classroom and work through that then I can leave at the end of the instructional day, versus if we're providing that time for them, that it's not, I choose not to take it.
Right, correct, you are correct.
Okay.
The site administrator will oversee that process, but every teacher should be allowed the 30-minute lunch period. If for some unforeseen circumstance they are not able to do that, this is not I opt in or out. This is you are given a lunch period. If you do not get it because of something unforeseen, then that would be an option for them to leave after the students have left.
Okay, thank you.
On that day.
President Anderson.
Correct.
Member Reese, to clarify too, this has already been in practice. Part of our conversation was to just formalize this and get it in writing so it's consistent across our district.
Okay.
And one example of somebody who may not be able to take a lunch is if we had a sped teacher who, maybe the parapro who called out that day.
Sure.
That sped student needs supervision on the playground or whether it be a lunch. And so that sped teacher may not take a lunch that day. That is one example.
Okay, well, now that we're seeing it in writing, because I have heard concerns from site to site that we have some side agreements, I guess, if you will, that perhaps an administrator is saying you don't need to do this, that you can leave every day at the end of when students leave, that they don't have to stay their contracted time, and those are kind of side agreements, which I think we need to be very careful of, that as we've known. We've experienced some concerns happening when some side agreements are made. And so seeing this and hearing from other people about some of these side agreements, which I will have a separate conversation with you, that I didn't want this in this writing, now that it's out there, to give permission, if you will, that we just do this. So that's why I was clarifying that this is not it's not a choice thing. This is if we're unable to fulfill our obligation, then this is what happens for that day, is where I was clarifying. It's not, I'm going to choose not to take this because I want to leave, or I'm going to choose not to. So anyway, with it being in writing, that's why I wanted to make sure. So, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Are there any other questions or feedback or comments?
President Anderson, I asked last year, and I didn't get a response, as to the percentage of staff that we have that are members of HEA. I think it's important that we have that information when we are voting on such an agreement. Is it 15%, 25%, 50%? If it's only 15%, why does HEA get to speak for the other 85% of teachers? There must be a reason why 85% of teachers choose not to be a part of HEA. Whether it's membership dues, whether it's due to their views, political views, whatever it is, HEA should not be able to speak on the other 85%. And before anyone claims that I don't support teachers, which is absolutely not the case, I think that I don't believe that we need an MOU for the HEA to perform its duties that they get dues for in order to do. HEA is already responsible for advocating for and supporting its members without requiring an additional agreement. Their ability to fulfill these roles should not depend on an MOU. The proposed MOU suggests a meet and confer process to address these issues collaboratively. Oh, geez, I can't. Thank you. Collaboratively. However, the means for collaboration and negotiation should naturally exist within the HEA's framework and its interactions with the school district. Teachers and staff are already paying dues for these very purposes, and an MOU does not enhance their representation. Do I agree with some of the demands? Do I disagree with some of the demands? No, but I believe that the things outlined in the MOU should be discussed directly with these teachers to understand their needs and determine how the administration can support them in performing their duties and making their life easier when it comes to their roles here. I also believe that a pay-for-performance compensation should absolutely be a factor when determining disciplinary actions. You don't incentivize someone when they violate district policy, state laws, or cross a line that should never be crossed. And the fact that the MOU protects that, I find to be a bit ridiculous. But anyway, that's all I have.
President Anderson, Board Member Van Hook, one thing that I wish to express, just because I don't know if you were aware of it, having obviously worked in multiple states with that, The benefit for the HEA is I don't even have to be a member of the HEA, and yet I still can have access to those types of things. So for example, should I be a teacher that I feel like I have a legal matter, even though I'm not a paying dues member, I still have access to legal representation via the HEA. Something else that happens frequently on sites, every site has an HEA rep, sometimes multiple depending on the site. And often one of the things that they do is they create avenues and opportunities for us, the teachers who are non-members and teachers who are members, to be able to discuss and express things that we have issues with or concerns. So even though our representation percentage might not be, at some arbitrary percentage that makes this beneficial, the point is 100% of our staff actually have the opportunity to be represented with respect to your issues and how those things go. You just may not be a paying dues member. A lot of times teachers aren't in this state because we are a right to work state, so our unions function a little bit differently. But also with respect to salary, it's a significant chunk to be a member of it. So I know a lot of teachers essentially utilize their site reps even though they aren't paying dues. Because again, we all get the benefit of whatever they advocate for or however that process is. Something else that I can see objectively, having worked here, and been a part of the district for over a decade now, being a teacher who worked when the HEA didn't necessarily have this cooperative relationship with district, things were a lot harder. And a lot of times our concerns and our issues never really got to feel as if they've been met. One of the things that I can see having this relationship is a lot of times some of the decisions that we've made which have negatively impacted teachers with respect to our teacher raise that we have done in that teachers collectively agreed to a smaller percentage. Our blackout dates calendar, which I still obviously have issues with. There are a lot of things that have happened that ultimately I feel have been very beneficial for staff across the board with respect to this working relationship. And we had public comment tonight discussing essentially teacher retention. And a lot of that comes down to the benefits and the things that we do with that relationship. So I understand your views with respect to them as a union in general, and I understand that, but I do think it is beneficial to at least list out and see the gains that this cooperative relationship has directly done for the staff here in our district. So as a former staff member and somebody who obviously has to make decisions that impact staff, I am appreciative of the fact that we seem to have a very cooperative relationship. And even though teachers may get some of the hardship with some of the decisions, it's nice to know that they are backing that decision because it makes it easier for us going forward.
President Anderson, Board Member Wade, I've spoken to several teachers within our district and other districts, and knowing that they have, for instance, MESA, MEA, and I've heard often that when, let's say, a teacher feels like they're being retaliated against, and they're not a member of the union, and all of a sudden they feel like they need assistance, and they go to a rep at their site. They're told, sorry, we can't help you, it's too late because you're not a member and we can't provide that legal service. I've heard that often. Another concern I have is many teachers feel like because of where HEA members stand politically, they don't feel supported. And they see, I see it myself, HEA members, they endorse certain candidates over the others, and it creates this issue with teachers that don't align with the political beliefs of HEA members. And it creates this negative feeling between them, and they feel like, well, I can't go to them because they won't support how I feel and my beliefs. And so that's a big problem. And if they truly supported all teachers, all all students, all parents, then I don't even remember when the last time AGA endorsed a candidate that was in support of parental rights. And I've seen it often, and it's really disappointing. And if they're truly going to support all teachers, then maybe they really need to pay attention to their nonpartisanship. That's all.
To be clear, Board Member Van Hook, that I understand where you're coming from with respect to the candidates that they may endorse one way or the other. That is not pertinent necessarily to this specific agreement. This agreement are for the things that are happening with respect to our district, contract hours, the idea that I'm legally obligated to get a lunch and to ensure ways that my legal contract is supposed to give me. That's what this is here specific. So I think it's fair to say that there might be things that politically you don't agree with some of this stuff, but that's not what this action item is for.
President Anderson, Board Member Wade, my point to that is the fact that how it makes other teachers feel that they don't feel represented. Not necessarily, I'm not talking about my feelings about the situation, is when teachers see certain individuals and who they support and how they behave, it makes them feel unsupported. So when we have HEA members negotiating things on behalf of, let's say, 85% that are not members, but those members aren't members for a reason, and those are some of the reasons why they might not partake. So, I mean, I don't want to create this as a debate, but those were just some of my statements.
I have a few questions. Can we get that percentage, the number of staff that are members? Is that something we can get in status?
I can get that from HEA, yes.
Okay, that'd be great. My next question is the fees. Man, I'm starting my 10th year of teaching, and I'm embarrassed to ask, I don't know a lot about the HEA or the groups in other school districts, but the fees that the teachers pay a fee to join, correct?
I would imagine they do.
Okay.
It's out of each paycheck that you pay, or maybe once a month. I don't remember what option I selected. But you pay, you decide whether or not you join, and then you have a accruing fee. So every paycheck, essentially, you're paying.
And then what does that money go to? Does that go into, is it even a part of the district's?
No, President Anderson, the HEA is not an entity of the district, and so that's why the MOU is in play, because Higley Unified wants a memorandum of understanding with HEA. HEA is its own entity, and so a lot of the reason why we don't have those numbers, that is not our entity to pull those numbers or pull the membership numbers or to.
But we employ one. I mean, meaning we pay one of the teachers who is the lead gets money from the district, though, correct?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm just saying, I mean, I understand now that they're a separate entity, but then they also get money from us to do that work or whatever.
A stipend to be the liaison for the district, yes.
Okay.
Because it's the extra time she's giving to meeting with the district to ensure that the district is engaged.
Sure, but it's a separate entity. I don't understand why it doesn't come from the fees if it's a separate entity. I'm just trying to understand the flow of money here.
When we discussed this last year, what was brought up essentially is the reason that fee was there was because this directly benefited the district, and that's why we were choosing to do this, because to have that working relationship and the things, again, like the calendar decision that comes in and that type of stuff, having that relationship made it easier. Prior to us having that, when we didn't, a lot of the concerns that individuals have and that, district doesn't feel or hear what the HEA is about, those types of things. It created a better working relationship between the two. And because her fees are the things that happen with the HEA, they have HEA obligations that are outside of this. They do things outside of what is specific to the district amongst their HEA. This was for working with the district directly. That's to Mr. Tyler's point. Mr. Moore.
President Anderson, so last year, the district had paid $4,000, so approximately $4,000 for at least the last few years, the district has paid to the HEA president to attend events, and I argued the fact that as the HEA reps, they're already getting dues to attend those events. We shouldn't be using taxpayer money to pay them to attend events, to act as a union representative when they're already getting dues. And so obviously that continuously happens. We're using taxpayer dollars to pay union members to attend events that they're getting dues to attend in order to support their members. And so that is also my frustration that we continue to do that. And yes, I feel like obviously they're very involved. The HEA members are actual teachers. And the fact that we do have this involvement with them, when I ask what percentage of our teachers are members of HEA, I find it weird to be told that, well, HEA is a different organization, so we can't give you that, and then be asked to vote on an agreement with HEA without knowing how many of our teachers are members. I think that information should be made available to us so that we can understand that relationship that we truly do have with HEA. So I understand what where you're trying to get here, and that's my frustration.
President Anderson, Vice President Van Hook, can I just make one clarification on the stipend? That stipend is to compensate a teacher, and our practice has been, it's been the HEA president for additional duties, additional obligations the district's asking that individual to be at. So events, different Higley, outside of their normal contract hours. The practice has been that stipend goes to the HEA president. It does not have to do with HEA responsibility. She's not out there advocating. We've asked, the practice has been that the HEA president is the advocate, the teacher advocate for Higley Unified, and that's what that stipend is compensating her for, to go to events outside of her normal contract hours. So I just want to clarify.
For example, the new teacher hire, they will be at that. That is something that happens always where they talk about.
That is outside her contract hours.
Yeah.
President Anderson, that's right. And she did attend the new teacher orientation last year. And what did she do? She promoted HEA. And then when you scan that QR code that was on that screen, where did it take you? To NEA. And so she's there to promote HEA, to promote new teachers to sign up for HEA. And so, again, I still, that should not be the district's responsibility to pay her to come there to try to recruit more members for HEA. That's the HEA's role. And if she gets more members that sign up because of her coming to the new teacher orientation and promoting HEA and they sign up, well, guess what? It benefits the HEA, not the district financially. So, I mean, we can, say it however we say it. It's not HEA duties, it's extra duties. Ultimately, when she attends events, she's promoting HEA. And she's trying to recruit more teachers to sign up for HEA. So it is HEA role, it is HEA duties.
Again, I think it is important to keep in mind that there are other benefits that the district gets beyond finances. to ensure that staff is in a situation in which there are direct things that impact staff, the policies we make, the decisions that and how they're enforced at an admin level. Regardless if you are a member or not of the HEA, all staff benefit from the fact that we are contractually making sure that we are legally given the things that are part of our contract, the 30-minute time, for example, and those types of things. As somebody who's seen it both before and after, I think it is incredibly important to keep in mind how that working relationship has led to some of our policies that, again, might negatively impact teachers with respect to time or the expectations that they have put on them. But when they have the opportunity to do it through representation, that and get feedback, because that is stuff the HEA does. They get feedback from both members and non-members before they go in and make these decisions and how they present to it. That is a direct benefit to us here at Higley across the board, because you have staff buy-in for what is happening in these decisions. That is not the political aspect that HEA does. I'm talking about the calendar. We're talking about the salary increase, those types of things. That is the stuff that we directly benefit from with respect to this relationship. And from a board member perspective, I am very much grateful that knowing the policies I'm putting forth are policies that are put forth with not only district in mind, not only parents in mind, but also staff, because if our staff aren't behind it, they leave. And that matters, especially as education is bleeding teachers.
President Anderson, benefit to the district as far as salary recommendations. When we approved our salary increases, I was trying to be able to ensure that the salaries that we were going to give our staff was going to be sustainable. And I didn't see the recommendation that was brought to us by HEA as a benefit, because after approving that, then we're told that if we don't get this bond and override passed, that we're going to have to make 15% cuts. Well, how was that salary sustainable and at the same time be told we're going to have to make cuts if the override does not pass? If this is truly a benefit to the district, then we really have to consider long-term impacts of these salaries that are being recommended by HEA. How is this going to impact our community when their taxes are increased in order for them to be able to help our teachers in the long run so that their salaries aren't cut? Those are the considerations that need to be considered when making such decisions. And I mean, this lie that's going around that, oh, Anna does not support our teachers, Anna doesn't want to give our teachers a raise. That is not the case. I wanted to give our teachers a raise. But when we are getting recommendations from HEA to increase salaries across the board, that's not sustainable. So, like I said, I do like some of the suggestions, but I don't have a union at my work. They ask for our opinions. We give them on things that we would like to improve on, and they survey employees and make those adjustments to help employees. Why can't we as a district be able to have that and be able to work with our teachers and say, what is it that you need? How can we work together to make it better without having an agreement with HEA? I just think that we should be able to do that. Our admin staff should be able to do that and be able to provide for our teachers and make their lives easier without an agreement. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
President Anderson, I'm just going to make a quick point that, just a clarification, is that HEA is not the one bringing forth the recommendations. That's meet and confer, which is both district and representatives. So it's not, I just want to clarify, it's not like HEA is coming and saying, here's our proposal. What gets presented to us comes out of meet and confer, and that is through discussion with all levels of different district admin, site admin. They have a variety of people on that team. So those are our discussions, which I just have to say I appreciate it coming that way instead of a back and forth. You don't want to get into bargaining or anything like that. They kind of hash it out there and say, okay, I think we have an agreed proposal, if you will, that we can take to the board for the district. And I hear you about sustainability, because that is probably all Mr. Moore heard from me forever when he got on here, is how are we planning for the future? How are we doing this? And thankful, because we had a very large unexpected expense that we have to pay back, and as a district, because of planning and talking about planning and sustainability. And I hear you, and I hope that no one's turning around and saying, well, we're going to give you a raise and then we're going to take it away. If we are faced with an override that does not pass, then multiple decisions will be needing to be made, and that will impact everybody. And so you need that relationship, whether it's HEA, whether it's meet and confer, you need that, because that's where those decisions are going to have to come from. And I hear you, and as an employer, I'm the first one to say, I'll survey my staff on what will make them, what will help them, this and that, but I also don't do their job. And I have made decisions in changing something, adding something, taking something away, that there's unintended consequences on, because I don't do their job every day. So when we're making these decisions and we have people who are there that can help have that conversation, then that helps us from minimizing those mistakes. So I hear you, and I honestly don't know that legally that they would have to provide the amount of members. I hear your understanding saying if only 10% of our staff are members, do they deserve a quote unquote seat at the table? So as a membership, I hear what you're saying. But I don't know legally they have to provide that information. As we've asked for it, I don't know legally they have to provide it, because it is a separate organization. It would be very nice to have an understanding of what that population is. But I think the memo of understanding, just again, it outlines the expectations on both sides, and it keeps that agreement keeps everybody in check, if you will. And I will say this till the day I'm gone, is I would hope anyone, member or non-member, a teacher or not teacher, any member of our staff that had issues, concerns, problems, I, in my heart of hearts, would really hope that they can address their supervisor, whether it's a site admin, whether it's our maintenance, whomever it may be, that they would be able to go to that person, that they could have that relationship and go to that person and express their concerns, and that it can be reasonably worked out from an individual standpoint. If we have staff who feels that they can't go and address their administration and get a personal grievance, whatever it may be, resolved, then I certainly would hope that they could come to our district office and express that and get that. And I also understand that we sometimes only hear one side of the story, and sometimes it's people's perception, And that perception is not always what has really transpired, so they feel wronged, and it's their perception, and so they feel like they cannot. But in my heart of hearts, I would hope that anyone who has a grievance within our district or concern or problem or issue that's work-related could go. And so I don't need a memo of understanding for that, for sure. And so I think this helps guide us and helps us kind of keep each other in check, but I certainly don't need that memo of understanding with anyone for any of our staff to be able to express concerns or needs.
We have policy for that. We have the grievance policies. You touched on, I still had more questions, but you touched on one of them. No, I figured it would, it would move. It's the Higley Education Association, not teachers, so can non-teachers join as well? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And I've taught this district, and I have had, whenever I was having issues, I've had an HEA member on site come up and talk to me and offered to help me out, and I've never been a member. So yes, they do work with people who are not members, absolutely. Regarding the president and the stipend and going and doing other things, is that option open to other teachers that maybe want to take on that task and maybe would like that opportunity to grow and learn and gain that?
That's part of HEA, so whoever is the president is really, to my understanding, and Tyler can elaborate, but that's their role.
Yeah, President Anderson, that's just, I think our practice is just that one stipend. So I think within HEA, if they want to elect a different individual to be, take that role, essentially, that would be up to their membership. But as far as our practice, it's been, unless they give us a different name, the HEA president has resumed those roles and responsibilities for coming to those events and doing those additional duties. So,
okay,
I can probably follow up with you with the HEA president to understand better how they kind of delineate some of those tasks, or maybe share some of those roles and give different opportunities for teachers or individuals a part of that association.
Okay.
President Anderson. And I know it's slightly off topic and we really need to get back to it, but can we somehow work out, it's my understanding that that stipend hasn't always been there. It's several years, but not always. Can we figure out from a district standpoint what the expectation is to earn that stipend? What are the roles and responsibilities to earn that stipend? If we're going to have a stipend, we should have expectations as to what we're paying for. Just the same as we have stipends for all other things, but there's an expectation there. So if we could get that figured out, that would be very helpful. What the time requirement is for that amount of money, what the expectation is, that would be helpful. And then just, again, real quick, I think due to the memo of understanding and where we've come as a district with the HEA, that has been very beneficial to our district in the aspect of COVID, when we decided to come back to school. We were one of the first districts to come back in person, and members or non-members, they looked to the HEA, what are we doing? As a group, as teachers, whether they were part of it or not, they looked to the HEA for guidance. And it was because of our relationship with the HEA that we were able to work through and get our teachers back in the classrooms after COVID. And like I said, we were one of the first districts back in the classrooms. And so that was very helpful. And I know members and non-members that HEA was flooded with concerns, questions, what's gonna happen, what about this, what about that? It gave one avenue, and then those that they were able to filter information. So if you had all these teachers who are asking questions in all these different ways, coming to the district in different aspects, they had one avenue. They didn't have to communicate that way. That's how they chose. Some did come through the district. But because of the communication with HEA and all of our staff, it allowed that communication. It allowed them to express the concerns. So it was beneficial to the district because I know other districts could not get their teachers back in the classrooms. So we were very, very fortunate that not every teacher, just not every person had the same viewpoint, but the majority of our teachers respected the response and the request of HEA that we return to our classrooms. And that benefited our district, that benefited our students. So I think it's because of the relationship we've built. If you don't have a good relationship with that association, then people aren't gonna care. And so it was helpful. Again, everyone had their own opinion. There were people who didn't care and they were gonna do whatever, but they looked to them for guidance to help. And that was helpful to us.
Right. And President Anderson, Board Member Reese, and to that point, they were also responsible for keeping the schools closed and our children masked. So that wasn't helpful for all the parents that wanted their kids in schools and unmasked. They were responsible for that too. So you might find it beneficial. I don't find it beneficial because it impacted a lot of kids, and the school closures and the masking, now we're seeing the mental health aspect of how negatively these kids were impacted. And now we're coming in going, we're gonna save you with all our social emotional learning and mental health support that we're gonna provide because we damaged you for 2 years or however long the schools were closed. So yes, eventually they agreed to open, but they did a lot of damage before they did.
I can't speak to teachers in other places or anything. I'm speaking Higley alone. Higley returned to school in August before anyone else did. It was not the teachers who required students to wear masks. And again, I'm not going to get into that. We had an executive order that was to the school boards that forced us to do so. And there was a lot going on. So I can't speak to any other place. I can't speak to any other district. I can tell you what Higley did. And Higley was back in school in August. I think we had 3 weeks after we would have normally started, so.
I want to make sure we stay on point.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We are on 10.7, and nobody's motioned, correct?
Motioned.
I did?
No, we didn't motion, nobody seconded.
Michelle motioned.
I think I read it.
You did motion.
You
Okay,
motioned.
then I motioned.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those oppose?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. All right, 10.8, the approval of payment procedures for ratified vouchers and salaries for fiscal year 2025. Is there any discussion on this one?
This is the resolution, wasn't it?
Yeah, the resolution is.
Oh, this is the warrants. This is the resolution.
The resolution as outlined in board policy DKE for the execution of warrants between board
I thought
meetings.
this was pulled. Yeah, so this is the resolution for the warrants.
Yeah, pulled for discussion, correct?
Oh, pulled for
President
discussion.
Anderson.
Oh, I
Van
thought,
Hook, yeah.
I
This
thought
was
you
originally
meant
in
that it
consent,
was.
and I think
Okay.
board member asked to be pulled this action. So.
Got it. Sorry, I thought you said it was pulled. I thought you meant you guys pulled it off the agenda completely. Okay. Yeah, my first concern is the fact that obviously this is it's an exhibit to a policy, and the fact that this was on the consent agenda, I have concerns with. I think it should be a separate action item on its own, which is one of the reasons why I asked to have this pulled. I'm just going to read my statement. Allowing warrants to be executed between meetings. diminishes oversight, risking unauthorized and inappropriate expenditures without immediate board scrutiny. This increases the chance of errors or fraud going unnoticed until the next meeting, when it may be too late to address then. Current board meetings ensure transparent and public financial decisions. This resolution undermines the transparency, eroding public trust in the board's commitment to accountability. It sets a precedent for bypassing the board in other decisions, potentially leading to financial instability. Future boards or administration could misuse this resolution to approve controversial or non-essential expenditures without thorough review. Given the district's history of financial fraud, we should be especially cautious and not allow this. Instead, we should enhance communication and documentation so that the board can quickly convene, even virtually, for urgent approvals, maintaining full oversight. Voting no on this resolution preserves rigorous financial oversight, transparency, and accountability, upholding the board's integrity and public trust. Any adjustments to warrant processing should be carefully considered to avoid unintended consequences and ensure we have robust governance. Thank you.
Mr. Moore, can you elaborate on how this works and why it ends up that there's...
Sure. President Anderson, members of the board, so this resolution is an annual renewal that we bring forth to the board. I believe we have 16 board meetings next fiscal year. We process warrants or checks to our vendors weekly. By not approving this would greatly inhibit our ability to satisfy obligations to vendors who have provided services, supplies, construction, et cetera. Potentially, risking the district to, not have these relationships or not have the ability to pay warrants. We could go into default. We could be, again, not an entity that vendors would want to work with because we would have an inability to pay them in a timely manner. So again, this is unfortunately due to the number of board meetings we have and the time between board meetings. This resolution, I think, is imperative to continue the operations of the district. Not only is it warrants on the expense side, but it's also payroll warrants that you approve and ratify at every board meeting. And so by not having this resolution in place, we would not be able to pay employees on a bi-weekly basis. And I think that would greatly disrupt our ability to hire and retain employees if we had to modify their payroll schedule from bi-weekly to match our governing board agenda. So.
And we see, it's not that we don't see them, we just may see these expenditures after the fact. Is this what?
That's correct, yeah.
Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, and at any point in time, if the board, I think as the practice, has an issue with the expenditure or voucher, we've typically pulled that to action and discussed that, and then provided any information that we have on that expenditure, explaining why we expense that, or I think we've even changed our process, not expensing that in the future. So we're happy to have those conversations after the fact, but I think greatly, not passing this resolution would greatly inhibit our ability to function on a day-to-day basis.
President Anderson. Mr. Moore, here's an example. We have a voucher from May 1st that's in this folder for us to sign. Some of us signed it last meeting, and it came back for more signatures. Now, how has that impacted our ability to be able to bring it to the next board meeting for signatures?
Yes, President Anderson, Vice President Van Hook. So currently we have a resolution in place for fiscal year 24. So those vouchers have been paid and expensed. That's why you're seeing that packet at this point in time, so that you are signing those, you are ratifying those vouchers because this resolution's in place. Now, if we didn't have that, all of those vouchers that you have in your hand would not be expensed. Essentially, vendors, employees would be waiting for your signature to approve those vouchers. And we could not physically expense those unless we have a resolution in place. So currently we have a resolution in place, which is why you're approving those, ratifying those vouchers. If we did not have this in place, we'd be bringing vouchers to you, asking you for approval to cut checks or to expense vouchers to employees. So you can see from May, yeah, there's a lot of money on those vouchers that would not be able to be expensed from our accounts until the board approved them.
Right. So when our vendors bill us, typical 30, 60-day.
Net 30, yeah.
So what prevents them, if they're billing us net 30, what prevents us from waiting until the next board meeting to be able to make that approval? Because that's the board's responsibility. So what's happening here is you guys are paying it and then the board, so what if the board votes no? What if you guys have made a payment, but the board decides to vote no? Are we gonna go back to the vendor and go, give us our money back? Even though you've provided the service and we've paid you, now we want the money back. That puts us into a lawsuit, right? Potentially, legal issues. So why wouldn't we, if the vendor's billing us net 30, net 60, why wouldn't we allow the board to make that decision at the following board meeting when we still have time to be able to approve? That is the board's responsibility, to be able to approve these expenses and not be told, oh, we already spent the money, we just need your approval. I don't see that as a proper way to be financially responsible. And as I said, knowing the history of our district, it's great. We have great admin, everything's great. Things can change. If things change and we hire a new superintendent, there's going to be time to be able to trust that superintendent and ensure that that they're acting, honestly. But in the meantime, we need to ensure that we as board members are responsible, because it's our job to be responsible for our finances. But if money's being spent and we're having to approve after the fact, that takes away our responsibility as a board to make those decisions. And if we are being billed 30 or net 30 or net 60, that should give enough time for the board to be able to make those approvals. That's all.
I think those are valid questions. Is that something, do we get a glance at these before you pay? Like, hey, these are the things that will be pending, or things that we'll be paying in advance, pending approval. But then I guess it could open another can of worms for, disagreeing with them. Thinking out loud right now. We've been doing this for how many years?
This is the standard practice.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not aware of any district that does not ratify vouchers. I think I don't know how involved the board wants to be, but I think the board's responsibility is to hire individuals to make decisions based on approved board policies and strategic plan. And so I think part of my responsibility, right, is to review expenditures as well and making sure they're in line with the district's goals and initiatives. And so I feel like, I have all day, my responsibility and my, role in the district is to kind of do that. And so, again, that's why the ratification comes before the board, because I think there's procedures and systems in place to ensure that expenses align with what the board's goals are and the district's initiatives are. So,
President Anderson, and I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's unfortunately greater than that. It's not just a vendor who's billing us net 30 or net 60. We have payroll. We have utility bills. We have a lot of other bills that we have to pay that may not fall in line with our board meetings, and trying to assume it does. Trying to get payroll approved prior to that would be very difficult. There are some months we only meet once during the month, but business still goes on. I hear what you're saying. What if the board, were to say, no, we don't want to approve that expense? Well, you said in your example, you said they've already provided us a service and now we don't want to pay them. Then we also have another problem. So how do you accept a service? How do you have someone do it and then not pay? We do get a look at them. There have been plenty of times where I was like, hey, what is this? Is this what we need to be doing? And they've asked, what would you like? And we've adapted some stuff. Now, I hear you also about, unfortunately, some of our district history. There has been leaps and bounds made to better protect the district. And quite honestly, during that situation, I don't even know that having this not in place would have stopped that, because that was creative. But, I think I hear what you're saying. It's our responsibility. The only thing I could potentially suggest, which then I think would create a ton of work, is separate out what could and could not be paid by a warrant. The expectation of your normal course of utility bills, your payroll, our health insurance, while it's once a month, it just also depends on how the bills fall too. By the time it's received, they've got to handle it, process it, and then we may not come together. And I'm sorry, I also heard through a very tumultuous process of trying to go through a superintendent search, and the amount of time that we had to meet and the amount of meetings we had to have, I heard a lot of expression of inconvenience to board members. And we did spend a lot of time. So I can only imagine if we're having to even meet virtually. I mean, you'd almost have to meet virtually once a week to make sure things are paid, they're paid on time. And then by the time you receive it, it's got to be all put together for you. You've got to have time to review it. And we already have concerns about the amount of time we have to review our board packet. So literally, you would have to at least meet virtually once a week. And like I said, I just don't know. I heard a lot of discontent on the amount of time that we had to take for that. And I think that I think it would cause more harm than good. And I hear you. This is our responsibility. We are financially responsible. And I think that we continue to put measures in place that help try and protect the district. We put dollar amounts for stopgaps to make sure that no, you can't pay this before it comes to the board. You have to have approval before you can even agree to this. Like, it's not even a matter of you can't pay this. You can't even agree to it until it comes to the board for our approval. And so I think that we would be causing more harm than good. It is hard for looking at these things after the fact. But I also know that with this admin and working with them, that if we've expressed a type of payment, we've had lots of questions. I don't want to just see that we paid Amazon this. I want the details. What was this Amazon purchase? And they have been gracious and great on providing that. And I know that's their responsibility to provide it. That takes time. So is it ideal for us to actually review payments and pay it after they're paid? No, it's not ideal. And we can continue to try and put processes in place that can meet everybody's needs, but it takes manpower too, and you have to have the people to do that. And then you have to have the commitment of of at least 3 people who are going to meet every week to approve them after they've had time to review them. Some are going to be greater than others. It just depends on what's on the payment plan that week. So I understand what you're saying. It is our fiscal responsibility to make sure that we're being responsible and only paying what we believe to be true expenses. And if we have issues and we're seeing stuff on there that we're not comfortable with, we have had a tremendous response from this financial team and our admin team to get us any information and to adapt anything that we're asking them to. So yes, it is our responsibility. I agree with you. I just don't know that there is any good answer that does not cause a complete problem.
President Anderson, Board Member Reese. To be fair, the superintendent search was in the morning. I mean, it was all during times where, I was supposed to be at work. So that was the inconvenience, not the fact that if we were to have these meetings, in the evenings or whatever, such as board meetings, that it would be an inconvenience. No, it would not. So it was just because it was in the mornings and different hours during the day where I was at work. So,
but if this is district's normal course of business, don't you think it should be done during their normal course of business? And that's actually not what I was talking about, but since you brought it up, don't you think that should be done during their normal course of business? If we're having to get together to approve it, don't you think it should be during their business day?
During our board meetings?
No, if we're having to come together every week to, even virtually, to approve these things because of time-sensitive matters, don't you think it should be during their business day, not?
So so an example of something that we pay out weekly.
Payroll's done every 2 weeks.
Okay. So, but not weekly. So we wouldn't come together every week.
But it just depends on when those
dates would fall. Right. So payroll, obviously, one of the most important things, we've got payroll. We want people paid. So that's biweekly. Everything else, utilities, we have at least a month to pay utilities. I know that. What other example would be something that could not absolutely wait till the next board meeting?
I think student field trips are constantly, I don't know if that field trip, is next week. Sometimes revenue for those trips are collected up until that final week, and then we expense a check.
Right, but we approve field trips during our board meetings. Student travel.
That's the approval of student travel for either out-of-state or overnight. We're talking about warrants, approving the expense check to the vendor providing that travel service. So you would not be able to cut that check to the service that's providing, what would be the hotel, the charter bus, the airplane ticket. We would not be able to cut that check, and the students would not be able to travel.
So how long in advance do we know this information?
It's case by case. There's also instances where we have cooperative contracts that authorize if we pay within net 10, net 15, we get a percentage discount. there's a number of different cases where it's not just a blanket net 30 on all expenses. So I would really have to do some due diligence to understand the true implications, but it's not as, I think, black and white as we are making it be, so.
I have a problem with taking away our responsibility. And I mean, this it's our role, like, and then we're giving that role away. I just have a problem with that, and I don't know a solution, to be honest. Can the wording be changed to say, you know, anything less than net 30, or I don't know. Can changes be made to that effect? But ultimately, it's our responsibility, and we need to take responsibility for it. That's what we're here to do. And I mean, what if this said policy? They're going to approve the policy, and then they're just going to come to us afterwards to ratify it. Like, how would you feel then? It's a problem. It's our responsibility to approve these things. That's all I have. Sorry.
President Anderson, I think there's a lot of the structure of how this system works and how this process works that has some feeling of discomfort because of the manner of time, legalities or things that we have to do, right? We can't even set a board meeting without making sure we have 24 hours notice before we post it and these types of things, right? So there are a lot of logistic things that sometimes we're just beholden to the process. I understand that there is concern. We have policies in place. We have approved vendor lists. We have as much as we possibly can in order to ensure that the system continues to function. To Mr. Moore's point, this is how it is done everywhere with respect to education in terms of the practice that we are doing. It's a practice that we've been engaging for the newest members of us, the last, year and a half. And I think it's important to keep in mind that should things happen in which something arises that we are, as a board, unhappy with, what happens then is we set policy moving forward and how that happens. We are dealing with humans, right? At the end of the day, we have all of these policies in place. And when somebody does something to violate the policy, I recognize that it doesn't feel good to be like, after the fact, we have to go and change it. But this is also not Minority Report. We cannot predict the future. So we have to do the best we can to essentially assure that the system can function. And I think given the length of time it took to even try to grasp just the ramifications of not following through with this policy, I don't think we will ever do anything that necessarily would ease your concerns, Board Member Van Hook. But I also go, the number of things that are negatively impacted by trying to create a situation beyond the policies and those types of things, I don't think outweigh the benefit of the system that is in place. And again, our ability to update policy and make those changes as they are needed. We have done above and beyond a good portion of things with respect to making sure that our vendor list and those types of things, we follow through that policy. And I'm grateful for how we've changed and updated the policies, obviously from past things to ensure that we're compliant. I just think it's important to kind of keep in mind that that is part of the reason why we have these policies in place. And yes, it doesn't feel good should somebody violate that policy to have to go back, but that's literally kind of the nature of how society functions in general. And so, I mean, I think it would be far more detrimental to not go through with what is clearly an age-old practice.
These would be, I think the date on this is, some of these were like 6/12, which was in between the two meetings, and these would be open for a board member to stop by or set up a meeting with you just to review prior to the meetings or even show up.
Absolutely, yeah.
For our time is now moving to 6, to show up just a little earlier and review them and ask questions as necessary.
I'd be happy to accommodate that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Then I motion that the governing board approve the resolution as outlined in the board policy policy exhibit, I guess, DK-E for the execution of warrants between board meetings.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Motion carries 3 with 1 abstention. All right, that's the last item, correct? All right, future agenda items. Anything need to?
What are we doing, the communication?
The communication protocols?
Protocols, do we
Do we
know?
have a, sorry.
I like the work study plan. I was just,
Any other suggestions, recommendations, questions? Okay. I'm sorry. All right, I motion to adjourn. Ooh. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Have a great evening, and I gave it to her. She said it first. And back to school. Just want to welcome everybody back to school. I think this was it.